Hi, everyone. I'm Mercedes with Rocky Nook, and I wanted to take a minute to thank you for coming to our first ever webinar. This is our first time hosting a webinar, but we plan to host many more. Let us know how you like this webinar and what topics interest you, or which Rocky Nook authors you'd like to see host a future webinar. And we will definitely take your feedback into consideration when we plan our next event. You can feel free to email me, Mercedes@rockynook.com, with any of your feedback or questions. Again, that's Mercedes@rockynook.com. This webinar isn't the only new thing we have going on at Rocky Nook, though. Keep your eyes on your emails. Soon we will be sending out a new newsletter, completely revamped. The newsletter will feature interviews with our authors, exclusive excerpts from upcoming books, a video podcast focused on bringing you photography tips and tools that you can use, reader-submitted images, giveaways, and more. If you've not yet signed up for our newsletter, or if you'd like to be informed about future webinars, you can do that at rockynook.com/information/newsletter. I'll post that in the chat in a minute, so you can go right there. Also, we are in the midst of a website redesign. In the next few weeks, we'll launch our redesigned website, which will not only be more visually pleasing, but will include improvements to our checkout process, our user account pages, and we will have the ability to accept pre-orders for upcoming titles soon. So that'll be really exciting. Now, for today's webinar, since you're here, you've probably heard of our Enthusiast Guide series. The Enthusiast Guides are designed to help you quickly learn more about a topic or subject so that you can improve your photography. They're written and designed to be packed with info and easy to dip in and out of. You can read an entire chapter at once or just pick one topic at a time. With either approach, you'll quickly learn a lot so you can head out with your camera and start capturing great shots. Today, RC is here to join us to celebrate the release of his book, The Enthusiast Guide to Lightroom. RC is a well-known and well-respected photographer, teacher, and author. He's an expert on Lightroom and Photoshop, among many other things, and I am happy to now turn the webinar over to him. Thanks for joining us today, RC. Go ahead and take it away.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? It's good to see everybody here. Brian Stuffel's on. D Fair, you've been using Lightroom for a few years. Awesome. Very, very cool. From Forest Fire, Smoke-Filled Skies of Central Oregon. I'm so glad you guys are out here. I want to spend some time talking to me about some of the Lightroom stuff. So I figured we would use this for kind of a quick series of things. And I know that when we first started talking about this, we said that we were just going to do this for 5 things, but I kind of want to open this up and I want to leave it for whatever it is that you guys want to see. So I'll cover a couple of series of things that I think that are important right out of the gate. And then from there, just dot specific sections in the develop module and the slideshow module and then print module, or anything that I think this is probably a good idea of something that you should do. Now, it's also important to keep in mind that this is something that is kind of behind the genesis of the book, right? What we wanted to do is we wanted to give you a series of techniques that I think you should keep in mind when you're working with it. It does go from a start to finish standpoint, but I think it makes it a lot easier to just go, you know what, pay attention to this. You know what, pay attention to this. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and just switch over to my screen rather than me talk about this. Now, if you guys have questions, make sure that you put the questions over on the right-hand side. Mercedes is going to flag them. And anything that is pertinent to what I'm talking about at that one point in time, we'll go ahead and we'll do that. Hey, Woodby Island, good to see you here. So as I turn over the screen, I'm not going to be able to see that kind of stuff, but I'm sure Scott can just text me and kind of keep me in the loop of whatever. So let's go ahead and just turn this over. I'm going to share the screen here. It'll do the loop. And I'm going to bring you into this one screen. Now, right off the bat, you're going to notice that I'm starting with a very basic install of Lightroom, and I've got 0 pictures inside of my photographs. That is not necessarily how I run my Lightroom. All of my Lightroom is usually collected inside of one catalog, right? If you click here, I'm just going to go to Open Recent so you could take a look at what my main catalog looks like, right? I create separate catalogs so that you keep different types of training that's involved. Now, it's going to be harder for you to see here in this one section, but inside of my catalog right now, I'm running 273,000 195 pictures that are inside of here. So just over 273,000. So I wanted to kind of talk about that just for a second, because I think that that's one of the first things that people don't necessarily know when they're talking about, when they're talking about Lightroom, right? Lightroom is a great way for you to keep everything organized inside of one spot. I always tell people it's a lot like having a notebook, right? If somebody were to come to your house and they knock on the front door of your house, they go, all right, well, here, take a series of pictures. I have a box of pictures and I want you to hold them for me. You grab them and you're like, okay, well, this is cool. I'm going to put them somewhere. Where do I put them? And you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to put them in the living room. I'll put them in the living room. I'll put them on the table next to the living room, and they're going to be right there. But you don't want to forget that you did that, right? So you're going to pull out a notebook and you're going to go, all right, those things are in the living room. They're sitting on that table. Somebody comes and knocks on the door again, and they hand you another box of pictures. And they go, all right, well, I need you to save these pictures for me as well. So you grab them, you bring them in, and you're like, where do I put these pictures? I'm going to put them in the kitchen. So you go to the kitchen, you put them in the kitchen, and you set it up. And then you're like, I got to remember that I put them in the kitchen, and you write it down in your notebook. Somebody knocks on the door again, and that process continues and continues. So inside of that, what you're doing is you're constantly bringing in pictures into your house, and you're constantly trying to organize them and keep in mind where you put them across your house. So Lightroom is exactly the same. It's the same concept. When you ingest your pictures, you're bringing them into your house. And once they're inside of your house, you're using a notebook to keep in mind where those pictures are and what you've done to them. Like inside of the house, you could go over to the pictures that you have in your living room and go, you know what? Let me alphabetize these. And you alphabetize that. You want to write that down in your notebook. That's probably the first most important thing that you should keep in mind when you're working with Lightroom. Lightroom is the catalog that manages, it's your giant notebook that manages the location of where your pictures are, as well as what you do with those pictures. So if you look at my section here, I'm going to go back into my screen again. I'll bring this down, right? I have 273,000 pictures that are sitting in my notebook. But what that's telling me is it's telling me the location of these pictures and what I've done to them. Even with a couple of big projects that I have probably about 200 gigs of projects. I have 148 gigs free on my machine. So that is because Lightroom is holding the location of those pictures, and it is not holding the pictures themselves. When you go to your catalog, right, if you go to your catalog settings here, this Lightroom catalog, I'm going to show it to you, right? This is the main catalog that I have. My catalog, the notebook that is holding the location and the stuff of the pictures, is only 4 gigs in size. Now, what happens here is people sometimes will turn around and go, oh, you know what? I'm just going to back up. I backed up my catalog. Everything's fine. All my images are safe. They are not. Right? If you follow back the analogy of the house, imagine people have been giving you pictures and you've been putting them in different parts of your house and you've been writing it in your notebook. If your house went on fire and you ran out and all you did is grab your notebook, you are not safe. So backing up your pictures or backing up your notebook does not necessarily mean that the pictures are safe. So that's probably one of the key cornerstone components of working with a catalog. And we talk a little bit more about that inside of the book, but I want to mention it right off the bat because I think that people, when they just start importing. And you don't really cover those sections that you do. Now, once I have that set, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to close this. And what I'll do is I'll skip this for now, right? So it's a little bit of a do as I say, not as I do for right now. But I created the sample catalog that we're going to use that's sitting right here on my desktop. Now, as that starts, we'll give that a second for it to start. You're going to notice that this notebook is completely blank. Now, what I would do from here is, when you import pictures, that's a good question. Let me see. Let me grab that question here real quick. We just got a question that came in. When you import pictures, would you be creating copies? Is the question. No, you don't. And it's a good question. It's a good question, Eduardo. Let me show you what I'm going to be doing here. So let's see here. I'm going to go to Open Recent. I'll go to that catalog. For some reason, it decided not to listen to me. So We'll open this up, and what I have is I have a SD card, right? Just a regular sample old SD card. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through the import part of the process, right? And from there, we'll go ahead and we'll actually take a look at what that looks like. I'm going to insert the card. And once I have that card inserted, I'll switch screens again. I don't want to necessarily just kind of be away from all of you guys when you guys are talking about stuff. So this is my house, right? So this is the house inside it. Well, this is the notebook actually, right? So you notice you have 0 pictures. Now, Eduardo asked, when you import these pictures, are you in essence creating a copy? Yes and no, right? So what you're going to do here is you're going to click on File and you're going to click on Import Photos and Video. If you import a card by itself, the card would have, this would show up as soon as you insert the card. Now, you'll notice that on the left-hand side, it's showing that it's picking it up from my Nikon D750, right? And it's so eject after import, which I think is a good thing. And then from here, you can do copy. Copy is DNG, move or add. Now, copy is the one that's by default. So yes, Eduardo, you are correct. It is making a copy, but it is making a copy from this section to a specific section here. Now, where you put this is entirely up to you, right? There's different people that put them onto the pictures directory. By default, it sets it up into the pictures directory. You put them onto removable drives. But the important part is that you're going from one spot to another spot. Now, by and large, the way that I do it is I import them into the desktop first. Now, I'm going to stop there for 1 second because I think it bears mentioning when we work with this. When I import this into the desktop, I'm basically following a specific type of a workflow. And this is something that's very common for people when they start working inside of Lightroom. What happens is when you start importing cards into your computer invariably is going to run out of space. And when it runs out of space, you turn around and you start picking up a hard drive and you put them onto a removable hard drive. Then that hard drive moves out of space. And then you got to turn around and pick up another hard drive. And then that hard drive moves out of space. So one of the most common problems that I think people have is that they constantly run out of space when they're working with this. So I have a specific workflow that I do to kind of try to mitigate that, right? So there's removable hard drives that I use for some of that storage, but then you probably can see it over on the left-hand side, like the start all the way over there. I have a network attached storage that I use. So when I put stuff into the desktop, I'm thinking that it's going to invariably move from one point to another point to another point. That is a workflow thing, not a Lightroom thing, but it's important to talk about at the very beginning. It's also important to be able to note that workflow is a lot like pasta sauce, right? Everybody's pasta sauce is the best, right? Everybody else's pasta sauce is going to suck. And, basically don't listen to anybody else's pasta sauce. The only difference with theirs and mine is that, well, mine's right for me, right? So I'll talk to you. So I wanted to kind of mention that because I don't want to necessarily have people be like, well, he said that we got to do this. I wanted to explain exactly why we're doing that. So don't have to worry about it for right now. You can copy this. Also important to note here is that you can uncheck a series of pictures or check a series of pictures by single clicking on one, shift clicking a series of pictures that we have here. And then once you have them selected, you can click on the checkbox. Now, build previews. This is important here, right? When you import these pictures, how do you want them to work? Minimal is usually the size of the thumbnail that you see when you're looking at it like this. If you switch over to standard, which is the next preview, right? It's usually a type of preview that's about this big, right? I'm going to hit the letter G just to bring me back out. The last preview that you have there is a 1-to-1 preview. Now, what's the difference between the three? It all has to do with time. So if you were doing minimal previews, when you go to double click on a picture and you see just a thumbnail grid and you double click on it, Lightroom's going to take the preview that it made and spit it out, throw it out, and then it's going to re-render. You're going to see loading, 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 and then it creates the bigger preview that you see when you double clicked. If you go in and zoom in, when you're looking at, if you zoom into a picture, it's going to turn around and say loading, 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 and it's going to make the 1-to-1 preview, right? Which is usually good for any kind of detail work that you're doing. So which one you use at the very beginning, at the outset, is important depending on the time. Let's say you're a wedding photographer, and you're a wedding photographer and you need to be able to just bam, 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 take a look at what's good and what's not good. You might want to then import the pictures and set the preview to be a 1-to-1, because what's going to happen there is you're going to be able to move next a lot faster than you would if you did minimal. You do a minimal, you double click, see the full zoom, and you can just see this loading. And it'll just be annoying as you try to go next picture. If you are not that time sensitive about something, then what you could do is you could import as minimal, and then the import process will be a lot faster and you can go through the pictures as you want. So it's an important difference. It's a tiny difference, but it's an important difference nonetheless. Now, back inside of here, once we have that set up, you can rename based on whatever it is that you want, as well as apply information during the import process. This is usually where I'll put in a metadata preset, which usually includes my name, email address, copyright information, and some general information about the shoot. A lot of the times keywording can be a bit of a pain in the butt, because a lot of the times people, don't keyword immediately. So what I usually do is, this was in Havana, Cuba. So I'll go in here and I'll type in Havana and I'll type in Cuba. I'm not going to put in church or steeple or any of that stuff just yet, but at bare minimum, I know that I have something for Cuba. Now, once I have that set, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put in Cuba 2017, and I'm going to import just these pictures. I'm not going to import everything else because I don't want to necessarily, from a time standpoint, I don't want to take it too long. So this grabs those pictures, it copies the pictures from the desktop, and it puts them right back in. Or it copies them from the memory card and it imports them here. You'll see automatically you're brought to this one section called Previous Import, right? And it tells me that there were 10 pictures that were previously imported. Now, you also have the option to do this. If you already have a series of pictures that you want to use, you can import those pictures as well. Like, for example, I'm going to use these pictures of my buddy Mia, right? I'm going to grab these pictures and I'm going to drag them inside of here. Now, I grabbed an existing folder and I drag it into the library module. And you have to be in the library module. Notice that at the start, it says add, right? So this is the equivalent of somebody knocking at the door of your house, handing you a folder and saying, hey, keep in mind where these things are. So dragging it into Lightroom, it's saying, well, just write it down inside of the Lightroom catalog that the folder is in this one individual location. So you don't have to copy. You don't have to worry about these. You don't have to necessarily set up a build preview. All you have to do is import. Now, during that process of the importing, all of that stuff will go to the current import. And then from there, once that's done, you'll see that you have set up a previous import section. Now, once we have that set up there, we need to start working on the concept of culling. And it's a good spot. I just kind of wanted to stop real quick. I wanted to stop real quick and just talk a little bit about, answer any questions that there would be in this one section. So Joel J. Strum says, RC, why don't you copy as DNG? That is a very good question, right? Why wouldn't you copy as DNG? Let me see here. I'll find a good example. I think DNG is a great idea. Just to pull out, I'm going to pull out $2 because you just said it, right? Anybody doesn't know the difference between RAW and DNG. I'm not giving this to anybody, but they're exactly the same, right? $2 bills. RAW. When you take a RAW file, don't worry about the fact that it's being crumpled, right? Just, right? It's packaged, right? Nothing's wrong with it. It's totally fine. So this is a RAW file, right? The RAW file has a specific size. And if I gave you a shopping bag and I told you how many of these you could put into a shopping bag, you'd probably say 100, 200, right? Depending on the size of the shopping bag, right? So same file, right? Same setup. What they did with the DNG file is they figured out a much more efficient way of packaging that information, right? The crimpling was just a packaging, right? How many of these could you fit inside of a shopping bag? A lot smaller. So what you're doing is you're turning it from a RAW to a DNG. You're converting this file and repackaging this information to be able to make it a lot smaller. And generally, it's a good idea. The only reason that I didn't do it right now has everything to do with just time. In a perfect world, I would go ahead and I would import all of these things and convert them to DNG, because I think from a time standpoint, while it takes a little bit more, you save a lot more space. You can get about a third off of each file. And if you're running 50 megapixel files, I think it's a good idea for you to do that, take the file size down a little bit. But that brings us into the second section. The second section has to deal with the concept of culling, right? I can't tell you how many times people will turn around and they'll say, Lightroom's taking me forever. And the reason that it's taking you forever is not so much because Lightroom's a pain in the butt, but because you're doing kind of an eye test when you work with Lightroom. And you'll do this. So we'll take a look at these pictures of my buddy Mia, who gamefully is working, right, as a subject here. So what you're doing is you're looking at this and you're going, all right, well, there's A or B, A or B, A or B. And that's the part that makes people literally want to poke their eyes out, right? The process here has everything to do with the fact that what you need to do is you need to get rid of all of the garbage that sits inside of your stuff. I'm going to see here. Let me quit my Skype so that I don't see any bubbles coming up. But you want to get rid of all of the garbage. As a photographer, I have 273,000 pictures inside of 273,100 pictures. Probably 60 of those pictures are actually any good. Everything else is garbage. And I know that as I'm shooting all of this stuff, there are going to be a ton of pictures that are not going to be good. This is also one of the reasons why I import to my desktop first. If I start making backup copies and I start moving stuff from one point to another into a removable drive immediately and doing all that stuff, that Mia folder that I have right now, the Mia portrait, right? If I were to take a look at the size of that, right? So that's 4.82 gigs. Of that, I would think that a series of 197, maybe 10 of those pictures are going to be good, right? Because of me, not because of her. I'm sure she did great. So why put that into an external hard drive? Why put that into a network attached drive? Why not put it onto your desktop first and then do the process that's a pain in the butt, which is the cull? Get rid of all of the garbage. You know the garbage. And a lot of this has to do, I used to be a teacher, right? So I was a high school English teacher a long time ago. And inside of there, what I did was I used to give test taking tips. And I would tell people, all right, well, how do you do tests, right? On a multiple choice test, if you have 100 questions, the number one thing that people tell you is you should answer the questions that you know immediately, right? Answer them immediately. Anything that you don't know is something that you skip. And you skip it and get to the end of the test. And then when you come back to the test, then go back and answer all of the questions that you didn't know. So if we apply that to the Lightroom thing, it's something that I tend to call iterative culling, right? And so that will help you quite a bit when you're working with something like this. Right off the bat, I'm going to do a shift tab that's going to get rid of all of the dialog boxes that you have there. I'm going to scroll to the very, very top here, and I'm going to double click on the first picture of her. Now, I'm going to hit the letter L to dim the interface, L to turn the interface completely off. Now, I do that because I don't want to get overly involved in, oh, well, if I could just make this a little darker, oh, if I could just make this a little brighter. Don't do that, right? All you want to do is keep these keyboard shortcuts handy. X, P, left arrow, right arrow. And it's exactly like the test. You know for a fact which pictures are the ones that you want to keep. You know for a fact the pictures that suck. So go through the process and get rid of all of the bad stuff first as fast as you can. So I'm going to do XP, left arrow, and right arrow. So this one, if you have to think about it for more than a second, skip it. Hit the right arrow and move on. So watch X, P, X, 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 X. No, that sucks. That sucks. Lighting's off. Lighting's off. Now she's being funny. Now she's being funny. Nope. X, P, X, X, P, X, X. And I literally go through the process this fast. right? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, this isn't good, this isn't good, this isn't good, this isn't good. And I'm constantly just going XP. You see that loading that's happening right there at the bottom? That's when it's moving from standard or minimal to standard, right? So imagine having to do that to 400 pictures, 500 pictures and wait. That would be a pain in the butt, right? Reject, 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 reject. And now I find a P. The moment that I find something that I don't know what I want to do with, all I do is hit the right arrow, move to the next one. That's a P. There's one that I don't know what to do with. I'm going to hit the right arrow. That's bad. Now, I'm going to shift tab here to bring the interface back up. And I'm going to hit the letter L to bring the lights up. And I'm going to hit the letter G. This is something that I want to kind of point out from a modeling standpoint and something that I find in photography that happens. So this is a little, not so much something that you have to deal with on the Photoshop side, but on the photography side. Anybody who's not comfortable with shooting has a specific amount of warm-up period. So I'm shooting all of these pictures here and I'm not really focused on the results. I'm just trying to get the client a lot more comfortable with what I'm doing here. So I know for a fact that all of these pictures were throwaways, right? I don't have to sit and take a look at all of these pictures. So right off the bat here, I could do X and P without even going through the full screen and save myself a little bit of time because I'm looking at the navigator here to see what it is that I want. I also have the option to single click on one and do a shift click on a series of pictures and immediately mark them as X. I can single click on a picture and take a series of pictures and immediately mark them as a P. I'm like, I remember that series. That part right there was really cool. These pictures from here to here were really cool. So I'm going to hit the letter P, right? And I'm going to make that process a lot easier. From here to here, everything sucked, right? I was completely out of focus, which can happen. I'm going to hit the letter X. So whether you go through the process by double clicking on it, shift tab, and then XP, 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 or you do it through the grid to isolate this down, you get yourself to a spot where all of a sudden you mark these pictures. And I'm kind of speeding this up also so that you guys can see kind of what I'm doing here, right? This is where I really felt like I started to really connect with what I was trying to do, right? So that's the picture that I wanted. That's the picture that I wanted. Right? That one, yes. And you continue to X and P your entire process until you get to the very end. Now I'm going to speed this up for you guys. Right? Get over here. I'm going to hit the letter X. So now, let's say that I finish this entire process, right? I get to the very, very end of this one and I'm doing a shift tab and I'm right here and I'm like, oh, you know what? Actually, I like that one. And it's at picked. Now I turn the lights on. I shift tab over here. And I'm going to hit the letter G for grid. I have a series of pictures that have been marked, a series of pictures that have been picked, and a series of pictures that have been skipped. Your library filter at the very top here has a way for you to filter out which ones you have here. So if I go over to attribute, I can turn this flag on to show me only the picked pictures. Take a look, 31 out of 197. I can turn this off. I can show the rejected pictures, 153 out of 197. I can show picked and rejected, 184 out of 197. But the most important part of all of this really is this one, the middle one, the unflagged. So I got to the end of the test. I know which ones are picked. I know which ones are rejected. What I want to do is I want to cycle back here and I want to get to the pictures that I had questions about. And this is the second iteration. This is where I would shift tab, get rid of the interface, hit the letter L twice. There's my assistant. And now I can come back here and go X, P, left arrow and right arrow a second time, right? So this really was an X. This was an X. That was a P. That was an X. That was an X. That was a P. That's good. That's good. Not good. I'm going to hit the right arrow. Now maybe do that. Now I got to go over this one. The moment I get back to the black screen, I'm going to hit the letter G for the grid mode, L to turn the lights on, and shift tab again. Now, the reason that nothing shows up, it says no photos match the filter. If I go over here, what we have here is we have all of the pictures that have been flagged, picked, and rejected. Now, I just saw a question come in from Scott where he said, are you just deleting from Lightroom or are you deleting from your computer? I'm not doing anything right now, Dave. All I'm doing is flagging them as picked or rejected. But you are exactly on the same point, because at this point, what I would do is I would flag all of my rejected pictures, right? I can do a select all. All you've done is you've gone through your notebook and you said the following pictures are pictures that I should get rid of. Now it's good on you to turn around and go, let me delete these pictures, right? So I'll grab these, and inside of the library module, I'm going to hit the delete key. Once I do that, it's going to say, do you want to delete the photos or just erase them from your notebook or remove them from the catalog? Now, this is largely going to depend on a job-to-job basis, right? If your job tells you you need to keep the deleted pictures, then you would keep them. If you want to save space, I would hit delete from disk. Now, I have just the pictures that I need, right? Out of 197, 161 of those pictures are garbage. Imagine if I took those pictures that were sitting here, right? So there's that Mia portrait folder that I had. I'm going to right click this, go to get info. It's 887 megs, right? It was 4 point something gigs before. So I got rid of a lot of that garbage right off the bat.
Hey everyone, it looks like RC is having some technical issues, so we're trying to get those resolved. Bear with us for a moment. We hope it's going to clear up in just a second. Looks like he's just trying to reboot and log back in. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Hopefully this is working. In the meantime, while we wait for RC to come back, go ahead and post your questions in the chat if you have any there. Also, now is a good time for me to mention, if you really enjoyed the Enthusiast Guide to Lightroom, we'd love it if you review us on Amazon. That would be great. Otherwise, if you want to share with us in the chat any questions you have or what your favorite part has been so far, we're just waiting for RC to come back. He should be back shortly. It looks like it was just a problem on his end. So it's funny to see all of you in the chat. Some of you have had, we've talked with you before. Some of you have placed orders with us. Some of you we know personally, so it's nice to see you all there. I'm just killing time. I don't know. Post your Lightroom comments here, and we'll see if RC comes back in a moment. Thanks. Hey guys, I see a few questions about how much the book is. I'll post a link so you can see all our enthusiast guides. Looks like RC is trying to get back on here. He should be back with us in a minute. There we are. Welcome back.
Thanks. So I'm literally talking to everybody about this. And in the middle of talking, I hear a giant boom. And it looks like it was like a transformer explosion. But I basically connected right through the phone. So I think we're doing good. But probably a good point to stop. I think we were talking about flagging, and we were talking about the size of the folder that we were working with. And we said that I took the folder from 4 gigs and I brought it down to like 800 megs. So imagine if I had taken that information and I had put that information onto a removable drive, right? That's just a lot of information to put there when you don't really need it there. So that part I was pretty happy about. Now I'm just kind of taking a look here. So am I deleting from Lightroom, or am I deleting just from the computer? So all I was doing here was I was just moving them and flagging them for deleting. Once all of that stuff was flagged, then I would obviously go ahead and delete. But it looks like we're back up and running. So any questions on that part? I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to leave it to Scott to continue to send me those questions. And we can move into the next portion of things, which I think is the concept of the collection versus the collection set, right? And I'm a big stickler for organization, right? That part I think is very important, how you organize yourself. And Lightroom, I don't think that they do a great job sometimes of explaining the benefits of working with one versus another when it comes to that. So I figured it would be a good idea for us to show, just for me to show you some stuff right inside of Lightroom here. So I'll go ahead and I'll share that. There goes the zoom. I'm going to come back over here. Now I'm going to set myself up on purpose for something. Let's just say, for example, I have all of these folders already inside of here. So I dragged a whole bunch of folders. I'm just going to click on import. Now you're going to see, of course, Murphy's Law. Looks like the computer's still trying to catch up to all of the stuff that we did previously. Oh, no, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. I'll go ahead and I'm just going to go back over here. I'm going to go back into my catalog. And what I want to do is I want to be able to show you a series of folders that I have. So I have all these folders of my daughter Sabine and my wife Jen at different moments of their life, right? So I have like one where she's using a Christmas hat. I have one where she wakes up on Christmas morning. Then I have a whole bunch of pictures of Jen when she got a haircut. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab that folder, drag it in there, right? I'm going to include the subfolders, and I'll just go ahead and I'll import them. Now, here's a gratuitous picture of my daughter when she was a baby. Now she's 9. So now from inside of here, right, training her right from the beginning, right? So she's very curious about the SB800. So looks good. Now, I have all of this stuff set up. So I have a series of pictures of my daughter Sabine at random points in time. Now, there are a bunch of different pictures of her. There are a bunch of different pictures of Jen. What I want to do is I want to be able to make a little bit of organization here. So to do that, I'm going to grab these pictures that we have from here. Single click on one picture, shift click the last of the pictures. And what I want to do is I want to be able to create a collection, and I'm going to call that collection Sabine Christmas, right? So now I have that right there, and I don't want to include selected photos. I just want to click on create so that you could see it right here. And I'm going to drag those photos over here. So now at any point in time, I can go ahead and I can go to the Sabine Christmas hat pictures, right? Rather than taking a look at my entire catalog, which at this point is only about 135 pictures, right? I can just go, you know what? I just want to see the Sabine Christmas hat pictures, and I can see the 11 pictures. Now, that in of itself is not really all that special, right? But the cool part about this is that these come from one folder. I could technically grab this picture over here from another folder altogether and drag it into the Christmas hat folder. right? So here, I can grab from one folder or from different folders, and all of that stuff could be inside of a collection. That's kind of neat. I'm going to grab this picture here, right? And I'm going to make another collection, and I'm just going to call this Sad Pictures of Sabine. This time I will include the selected photo. So now I have a second collection. I'm going to come back over here to the very top, and I'm going to make another collection because I want to be able to keep this in mind, because I think it's just funny moments in life. And I'm going to include that picture as well. So I have a specific folder in one location, right? So if I were to do this, I can right click, I can go to the folder in the library. See, it's from this Sabine Christmas hat shoot. However, that's that one picture. But that picture also exists in this collection called Funny Moments in Life. Right? There it is by itself. Double click it. It also exists in this Sabine Christmas hat collection. And it also exists in this one area called Sad Pictures of Sabine. So 3 different locations, same picture, always referring to one file. Now, that is one powerful thing that I think we have with collections, and the fact that you can go to a bunch of different locations and still reference one file. Powerful. What's even more powerful is this. If I were to grab this picture, let's say inside of the develop module, I switch over here and I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to make it completely different. I'm going to make it brighter, right? Super bright. Now, that picture has been changed. The picture in the catalog has also been changed. If you go to the collection, the Sabine Christmas hat picture, that's been changed. The Funny Moments in Life picture, that's been changed. This picture, that's been changed. So extremely powerful component in that you have 3 different locations here, yet all of them refer to one file. And the moment that you make the change inside of one spot, all of the different references of that picture get those changes together. So what happens previously when people turn around and they start doing this kind of stuff inside of aren't keywords and collection sets 2 different ways of doing the same thing? No, they're not. Keywords are used for identifying stuff. Collections and collection sets are ways of organization. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So from here, what you have is you have this organizational structure that you could put into 2 different things. So David, to your point, what would you say in terms of keywords to try to be able to take the same picture but have it be referred into 3 different spots, right? The set of keywords that you would have for that one picture would be different, right? Like how would you filter out one versus another? You would just be adding more keywords to the picture that would make the process a little bit more confusing. So these are almost kind of like albums, if you will. But the powerful portion of it is that if you tried to do this from a folder standpoint, you would have 3 different copies of the exact same picture in 3 different folders. And then if you made a change to one of them, you would have to remember where those pictures are in other folders, as well as the changes that you made for it. And it's also 3 times as big, right? In this instance, it's one picture, it's still the same size, and it's referred in 3 different spots. So the concept for that, for collections, I think is really cool. And I think it's important for people to get. And I don't think that people have done a good job of kind of talking about that. I talk a little bit about it at First Shot School with my Lightroom class as well. But we talk about that in the book. Now, this is where it gets even better. And I know it's nerdy, but I get into the organizational portion of this thing. But I'm going to show you a couple of tips real quick just to kind of get us moving here. So I'm going to go over here to the library module, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to deselect. I just right click right here under the word folders, and I'm going to deselect solo mode because I want to be able to see 2 things at the same time. I want to be able to see the folders and I want to be able to see the collections. Imagine if I have all of these folders. So I just single clicked on one folder, I shift clicked on a series of folders. I can drag them right into collections here, let it go, and let's do that one more time. I've instantly made collections out of those folders. So that's pretty cool, but it causes a problem. Now, imagine right? You're looking at this Sabine Christmas shot, Sabine Christmas morning, Sabine Christmas evening, Sabine meeting Poppy. But in the middle of all of this stuff, you also do weddings, you do portrait shoots, you do model shoots, you do work shoots, right? So how annoying would it be for you to turn around and be like, Sabine, 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 Sabine. Oh, there's the wedding that I shot because it's Sarah. And then you have Jen, 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 Sabine, Sabine, Sabine. And sorting through all of this would be a big pain in the butt, right? So not necessarily the best way for you to see stuff. So what I want to be able to do is I like the concept of the collection. I like the fact that you can add a bunch of different things to an album that you can refer to it. But the problem that you run into here is that you don't have a way to be able to create this organizational structure. But look, right off the bat, we have a whole bunch of stuff that organizationally makes sense to put together, right? Like, what does Sabine have in common? Well, they're all about Sabine. So what if I took a series of collections and just created a set out of all of them? That's where something like the collection set comes into play, right? So I can make a collection set called Sabine Shots. This is a collection set, so it's an organized group of collections. And inside of here, there's my Sabine Shots. I can grab, single click one, shift click the last one, and grab the Sabine Shots and put them inside of the Sabine Shots collection set. Now, when I want to take a look at my entire catalog, inside of here, I can see all 135,000 pictures, right? Let's just say 135,000 for now. But anytime that I want to see anything that's Sabine related, I could just go to the Sabine section and see that. Anytime that I want to see all of the stuff that's Sabine and Christmas morning related, I can go to that one. But we can take this further, and I think that this is where it's important, right? Look, Jen, 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 Jen. Well, what do all of those have in common? Well, that's my wife, Jen. So I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to make a collection set, and I'm going to call this Jen Shots. And I'm going to drag those inside of there. So now when I want to see shots of Jen, I'm just going to uncheck here, select solo mode again. And now anytime that I want to see Jen Shots, I go to the Jen Shots. Anytime I want to see Sabine Shots, I go to the Sabine Shots. Anytime I want to see work shots, I would go to the workshot collection. But we can take it even further still, because what does Jen and Sabine have in common? Well, they're family. So technically, I could make a collection set called Family Shots. And inside of here, I can stick the Jen Shots and Sabine Shots. Now, anytime I want to see work stuff, I go to the work folder. Anytime that I want to see family stuff, I go to the family stuff. All family stuff can be seen here. All Jen stuff can be seen here. All Sabine stuff can be seen here. And you could really expand this out, right? I'm going to show you how I use it inside of a real workflow, because I think it's more important. It's important for you guys to kind of see it in real life. Now, at First Shot School, I have this also kind of set up where you guys can see this. Come on. Don't show the loop. So here, I'll show you what my real collection looks like, right? So if you look here, right, under model shoots. So anytime that I do a model shoot, those are the individual models that I'm working with, right? So I'm going to go to Lily. Every time that I go into Lily, there's the different shoots inside of collection sets. And inside of those collections sets, I have individual ways for people to see these shoots. Anytime I want to see anything that's Lily related, I could see all of it. I could see individual shoots or individual pictures that have been selected. If I want to work with anything that has to do with landscape shoots, I would go to my landscape shoot section. And inside of here, you would see Bodhi. And that organizational structure makes it so that you don't necessarily have to worry about, kind of where they are and where they're keyworded and all that stuff. So it's a lot easier for you to work with. Now, the questions, aren't keywords and collection sets two different ways of doing the same thing? We've talked about that. Would you create virtual copies into the collection, Luis? You could. You very well could. It all depends if you needed different versions of stuff. So let's go back over here into the pictures, right? If I were to go to, let's go back to that other catalog, and inside of the catalog, oh, nice Eclipse shots, thanks. I wish I could show you over there because I have like all these. I was doing these limited edition prints, and I have them all kind of set up over in that one section. Now, look, I always show pictures of my daughter. They don't always work out. See, so it's a work in progress. But let's just say, for example, we'll go back to this Sabine thing, right? If I needed to, let's see, where do I have it? Right here. So if I wanted to use this picture of Sabine, if I wanted to see different versions of this shot, you are correct. I could come over here and create a virtual copy. A virtual copy looks exactly like the same original picture, but you have a little dog ear on the lower left-hand corner of it. That's telling you that it is a virtual copy. The cool part about that is that now if you did that and went into the develop module, you could make a change to this picture, make it a lot darker. And notice this one's bright, this one's dark. I can right click on this. I can create another virtual copy. And let's say I want to turn it into a black and white and make it brighter. So now this one, and this one are three different versions. I can shift click to highlight all of them. I'm going to hit the letter N to bring it into survey mode. Shift tab to show all three different versions. And they're all still referencing one file. And that, I think, is pretty powerful. So if you needed different versions, then the virtual collection, I think, is a great idea for you to do that. But if you were just doing it to be able to keep references inside of different collections, it's probably a better idea for you to just not have them be virtual copies and go from there. Now, that talks a lot about organization. I'm going to do this, because we talked a little bit about it, right? So I'm going to grab here. Now, I'm going to just drag a series of pictures here, black and white. Just because I did it, I'm just going to go back over to the develop module. People talk about just setting up black and whites. They're so easy to do that people buy presets on this stuff. And I'm like, man, don't buy presets. You can do it so much easier on your own. All you got to do for black and white pictures is come over here. In the develop module, there's a section here called black and white. Click on that. You're going to get the most blah, the most generic black and white picture that you're ever going to see. But this right here is your key, right? This little targeted adjustment tool. What that does is it tells you, you don't have to worry about the sliders that you have here. All you really have to worry about is grabbing this and finding a specific section, clicking on it, and you can make that brighter or darker. Right? Make that darker, click here, make that brighter, come over here, make that brighter. Now you can actually mix the type of black and white that you want. The powerful portion about the black and white is not necessarily the mixing of the color into black and white. It's really more after you do this. Once you get this kind of taken care of, people don't do this, and I think they should. Go back into the basic panel. Inside of the basic panel, almost always when you set up a black and white, you need to add more contrast, more whites. You need to do a little bit more toning with the black and white image after the fact. You need to add a little bit more clarity. You need to go back into this section here and add detail, a lot of sharpening detail in order for you to get it. So just clicking black and white isn't enough. Just clicking black and white and dragging the targeted adjustment tool up and down isn't enough. Make sure that the key with this is to go back into the basic panel, make some adjustments, go into detail, add your detail, and then you're going to start getting some cool things. Even better still, sometimes you'll see people go in to split toning. And inside of split toning, what they do is once they have it as a black and white, they go, all right, well, why don't we assign a shadow a specific color and then a highlight another color? And usually you'll see those colors kind of be a little more towards the bluish side. So it's not really a black and white, but it kind of looks cool as a black and white. So you go to your shadows, go into the blue section here and click just above this one area right here. All right, so let's say hue 231. Then your highlight, come back over to the same spot and just add a little bit to the left or to the right. It's kind of hard to see, but it does add a little bit of a different feel to that one black and white picture. So I think that that's something that's very important to do and very easy to set up. How do you add a tone to the whole image, as in a warm tone, subtle selenium tone? Stan Hopper, great question. The way that I would do that, let's see, let's go back over here. Two ways, right? You could take a tone, right? Take your highlights and your shadows and you can put them into the same spot, or you can just move the balance from one direction to another. So now you don't have to worry about having it inside of one spot here, right? So since you're tinting a highlight and a shadow, you can mix the two together, or you can just tint one side and then just ride the balance slider all the way over to the right, and now you're tinting with just one section. More often than not, though, you do want kind of a contrasting, right? And so it's more of a duotone rather than an individual, just like one tone that curves over it. That's probably the easiest way that I would do something like that. Let me see here. Let me just go back over and kind of, thanks for the intro, black and white. Yeah, and that's the thing, Denise. It's really not all that hard on the black and white side of it. Black and white tells you a couple of different things. What they tell you is color, right? You change the colors individually, right? Go into that targeted adjustment, but almost always clarity, detail, noise, right? Grain. You want to be able to add a little bit of grain inside of this one section. I'm going to jump back in so you could see it. We'll go back over here, and inside of the effects panel, make sure that you grab a little grain, put a little grain into the picture, and then you're done. Guys, and when you do presets, if you were to go out and buy presets, and it's one of those things that annoys me to high heaven, because what'll happen is this is one, right? Click on a preset. Once I've done all of this work, I want to save it. All right, so I'm going to call this Sepia Madness 1, right? Sepia Madness, the yada, yada, yada company. I made this class on creating presets at First Shot School, and it was one of those things I was telling people that presets are about as good as what they're named, right? So it's almost always some cool name. So Sepia Madness 1, you click on create. Now you're done, right? So now you'll come over here, you'll go to your split toning thing, and I'm going to grab the hue and turn it just a little bit. Oh, that's a different preset right there. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to make this one because I made a change, right? So it's called Sepia Madness 2. Oh, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take the clarity, ride the clarity up. And now I'm going to go back over to the preset and I'm going to call this Sepia Madness Extreme. I put it on caps or something. But the important part is, how do you save that work? Any change that you make inside of the develop module, all you got to do is go to the preset section, click on the plus sign, select all of the different modules that you changed, and give it a name. Now, once that's done, if you go over to a second section and you go, oh, you know what? I'd like to be able to use the Sepia Madness Extreme. You click on that, and now you have that preset set. But what we haven't done is we haven't talked about the overall developing, right, of a picture. And I don't want to necessarily go away without doing some of that stuff. So I figured I'd give you guys a couple of moments to ask any kind of questions before we get into that one section. Let's see here. While you're typing any questions, I can go ahead and I can just load the next set of things that I want to take a look at, and then we will go from there. Let's see. So black and white was great. Good eclipse shots. Small size for virtual copies. This would limit changes to the original. Yeah, that's all fair. And I'm gonna go ahead and just check here let me see. We talked about the virtual copies. We talked about keywords and collection sets. I think you guys are doing pretty good. Now, will the webinar be available? Yes, they are recording this, and they are going to rebroadcast this out for people. So this is what they wanted to do here, is just kind of have a little private one-on-one where we can talk about these kinds of things and promo the book. But, oh, show you this. Sorry about the noise there. So take a look at this bottle. All right. And this is an example that I use when I work on the seminars. So a lot of the times, whenever I'm taking a look at anything inside of developing a picture inside of Lightroom, I always like to use the analogy of a bottle, right? So when you look at a bottle halfway full of water, a lot of the times what you do is you can tip information this way, and it tips over this way, and all of your information kind of moves over this way, right? Tip in one direction, tip in another direction. And all that does is all that water moves from one side to the other side. So when you're looking at your pictures, what you want to do is you want to keep that analogy of the bottle of water in mind. Now, let me show you. Come back over here. We'll do the infinity loop. And now what I want to do is I want to go and take a look at a picture like this. Okay. So there's our overall exposure. Now let's go back to the bottle of water analogy. If I go to the develop module, this is my bottle of water. Now, if I tip the bottle of water from one point to another point, what you're doing is you're taking all that data and moving it from one side to the other side. Yes, the exposure slider makes it brighter and darker. Obviously, that's what it does. But more importantly, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to have that bottle of water evenly covered, or have enough coverage across this entire range. So you can either tip the bottle of water, or you can split water down the middle, almost kind of like parting of the seas, right? If you grab a picture and you take it from the middle and you grab the middle tone portions and add contrast, what you're doing is you're taking information from the center of the picture and you're moving it out to the very edges. So if you move this in, notice that the picture comes in. The reason that I like using the bottle of water as an analogy is because sometimes what happens when people start taking a look at their pictures, like if you look at this, you're like, the picture sucks, but I have no idea as to why it sucks, right? So immediately, rather than going into quarter tones and colors and things like that, if you think of it from a bottle of water, you can say to yourself, all right, well, I should generally have enough information across this range. And if it is not even, you're going to cause some problems. So if you take a look at this and you're like, tip or split, right? How would you tip or split? If you look at this picture, you can say to yourself, all right, tip or split. Like, what would you do here, right? Tipping it wouldn't really help you, right? The problem is all of the information that you have is sitting right here. Well, the bottle of water needs a little bit more water here, needs a little bit more water here. If you add contrast, split, the picture still sucks, but you're getting a lot closer. So that's the kind of thing that I think is important. So exposure and contrast can be easily explained, or at least quickly explained, in something as simple as tip or split. Now I know, by knowing that, is I got to put some more information inside of the middle and move that over. Once you've done that, you also have to start addressing shadows and highlights. So like, for example, if you look at this one picture, there are certain areas inside of here that are completely blown out, that if I were to click on this over in the histogram, that information is not going to have enough data, right? So if I click on that, I'm just going to leave this turned on by clicking here. Your highlights slider will take all of that information inside of the highlights and dragging it to the left. See that those blinkies disappear. Now there's enough data in that section for it to be able to print. So that I think is pretty cool. If you flip this over to the shadow side of things, you can come over here under the shadows and bring up a bunch of information out of the shadows by just grabbing one side. And the important portion about these things is not so much what it does to all of the picture, but what it does to just the portion of the picture that you need. You would be surprised as to how much you can get done with just exposure, shadows, highlights, blacks, and whites. You can clean a picture quite a bit when it comes to that stuff. Like if you were to take a look at this one shot here, right? I can grab this here and grab my shadows, bring my shadows back up. Now I have some information. Once I have that, I can tip or split. I can increase, grab my highlights, bring those down. And a picture that I normally would have thrown away, right? If I do a backslash, before, after, before, after. can be saved by just these 4 sliders. And I think that what happens is a lot of the times when people start working with stuff is they don't necessarily go through it from this kind of, they don't go through it from this procedural standpoint and go, all right, well, let me take a look at this bottle of water and let me work this kind of stuff out little by little. Those 4 sliders are very key to that kind of stuff. And I think you can do stuff well there. Ian Johnstone says, in the detail section of the develop module, changing the detail slider doesn't seem to do anything. It does do something, Ian. The difference with this, and I'll show you, let me show you here real quick. Let's go back over. There's the infinity loop, right? The only reason that you don't see a lot of changes inside of the detail slider is because you see this little exclamation point. It's telling you that in order for you to be able to see them, you really need to be zoomed in to 100%. So notice that as I increase the sharpness there, watch, I can click on this little power button and you can see that there is a bit of a change that happens there. And I'm going to increase the radius. I'm going to increase the detail. I wouldn't necessarily do this much, but turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on. So there is some sharpening that is happening with that. It's just hard to see when you're just looking at it zoomed out. You have to kind of be zoomed into that in order for you to be able to see that. Now, from there, I kind of wanted to just stop here and just kind of take a pulse and see how we're doing so far. I think we were only supposed to go about an hour, but I wanted to just kind of open it up in the event that anybody has any additional questions or anything that you guys want to be able to specifically see. You have a very important meeting to go to, Kurt. Yes, Kurt, they are going to replay this later. So you should be able to get this. You should be able to get this back up. Somebody had said something about printing. Let's have that be the last thing, right? I'm going to go over here. Now, what can I tell you about printing that I think is important? All right, let's go over to this one section. Now, if I were to take this from a print standpoint, almost always, 99.9% of the time, the problems that people have with printing have to do with brightness, not necessarily color, right? So let's say, for example, you're in the print module, right? The way that I work the print module is usually like this. Right? First thing that I'll do here inside of print is I'll work with my page setup. So page setup, I'll go, all right, well, I'm going to shoot to a Pro 1000. I'm going to shoot 17 by 22. So right now this is set for Canon Pro 1000. I also use a Epson Photo 800. So I'm running both of them. But let's say that I want to do a 17 by 22. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the paper size. I'm going to click OK. Once the paper size is already set, the second thing that I'll do is I'll do my overall layout. So I'll come back over here and I'll set my margins for this. So let's just do one all around. Now I have that set. Once I have 1 inch all around, then I'll go ahead and I'll start refining what that cell size is going to be. And that's the second thing. Now, from there, the next thing that you need to keep in mind is what you're going to do in terms of color. Now, when you're printing, what you're doing is you're sending information from the computer into the printer, and the information about how it pushes out a specific type of color is going to be different from manufacturer to manufacturer, Canon, Epson. It's also going to be different from paper to paper, gloss stock versus matte stock versus canvas. So what you need to be able to do here is you need to be able to have a good translator of information. And this is kind of just doing a 35,000 foot explanation of it. And all of that has to do with Icc Profiles. So let's use, for example, the fact that I want to print to a specific type of paper, right? Let's go ahead and go to, let me see here. Oh, wow, this wasn't doing screen sharing. Let me see here. Is it impossible for printing in Lightroom to make a full bleed print? No, it's not. The Photo 800 does it. The Canons do it as well. I didn't know you guys couldn't see that. So let me just do this here. So page setup. There's the page setup that I was talking to you about, and that's set for a 17 by 22. Now, I'm just going back here, and I just reached Once I have that set there, I'll go ahead and I'll stop this. I'm just going to show you guys what I'm doing in terms of so there's, I just grabbed that from the back, right? So this is a Hanamiel paper, right? And fine art pearl. So this is a fine art pearl paper that I like. I think it's really, really good. So I'm going to print with this. Let's just say that I am going to print 8.5 by 11, right? Because that's the box that I have. So in order for me to be able to do that, fine art pearl, keep that in mind. I'll go ahead and go over here. I'm going to go to the Hanamiel website, hanamiel.com. And inside of here, I'm looking for this one section called Icc Profile, right? Click on Icc Profile. And I need to download the profile for the paper for the printer. So manufacturer, what am I doing? I'm going to do Canon. And inside of here, let's say that I'm going to do the Pro 1000, or if I were doing the Epson, it would be right there. Paper group, I'm going to do the glossy fine art paper. There's fine art pearl right there. I'm going to click on that, and it puts this information here. And I'm going to download that zip file. This is absolutely important. Everybody messes this up, right? And this is usually what causes the problem. So inside of here, there's the Icc profile. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to library. And under library, I'm going to go to color sync. All of this is explained. I have a print class on First Shot School that talks about it. I do some explanation on it in a book. If you guys want to see a video of it, I'll send you a video of it because I think it's important for people to know this stuff. Now, I got to change my page setup, right? Because now I'm not going to do 17 by 22, right? I'm going to do a letter. Let's go to letter. We have that set up. I'll keep the guide size. So page setup, number 1, guides and layout, number 2, print job. This part right here is everything. Under profile where it says managed by printer, there's all of the different profiles that I have set up or other. Now, I just installed this. So I'm going to have to scroll down here. There's my Epsons. And there's fine apparatus satin. Oh, I might have to restart in order to be able to see this. But inside of this list, let's see. I'm going to restart because I think it's important for you guys to see that stuff. But once we bring this back up, you should be able to see this. You should be able to see that fine art pearl should show up. So let me just see here. Cynthia Hines. I lost a lot of photos when my hard drive died. They were able to save. I didn't see Cynthia Hines' question. Oh. But when in Lightroom it says they're missing, is there any way to have Lightroom recognize them, or do I have to redo everything? No, you don't. You don't. Don't do anything. Stay right there, Cynthia. I'm going to show you how to do that. Let's do that again. Now I'm going to have to go to my recent. I'm going to have to go back to that catalog. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So while we're doing that, there's a section here. Let me show you guys. And I think Mercedes is going to put this up, so I won't necessarily worry about it. But if you go to my site at aboutrc.com, or even better yet, if you go inside of here, they're going to talk about a promo for a book or something like that. I do explain something about. I have an online training school. It's called First Shot School. And inside of there, I have a bunch of classes, right? I've been wanting to work on classes that are very straightforward, simple, and to the point. And what I did was I made them easy for people to get into, right? I'm just waiting for that thing to restart. Like the library workflow, the large Lightroom workflow is like $20. Collections class is $20. So they're, I think, pretty digestible in terms of price. But what I did also was I went inside of here and I have this thing called a super bundle, and there's 15 classes plus presets, that presets class, 50 presets, and then I'm adding the book to that as well. So any of the stuff that I talked about here, you can also find over at that First Shot School site. Now, I think we're back up and running here. Let me just check the webinar jam thing. Now, I'll go back over here. And I'm going to go over to this one section, and So there's the Fine Art Pearl. Now, click on that, click OK. Now it says Fine Art Pearl. So page setup was the first thing. Layout was the second thing. Under print job, make sure that you use the correct profile for the correct paper, for the correct printer. And then this is the part that's the pain in the butt. A lot of the times, because people do print calibration or they run their sliders a lot, they run their monitors really, really bright. And a lot of the times when you calibrate your monitors, they always ask you to bring it down really, really low. Lightroom added this one section called print adjustment, which gives the picture brightness after the fact. Notice that if I bring the slider over to about 15, if I bring it to 100, you can't even see anything. If you bring the brightness to negative 100, you can't see anything. So this is all brightness instruction that you add after the fact. It makes people that do color management roll, right? It gives them aneurysms that you cannot see this. On average, I find that between 15 and 25 is what I use when I have an uncalibrated, super bright screen. We can go into that in a little bit more detail. I can point to you some resources to why that works. But page setup being one thing, layout being a second thing, make sure that you use the correct profile for the paper and the printer that you're using and add a little bit of print adjustment. Probably the last thing that you'd have to keep from here is you'd have to make sure that the quality in media is also set correctly. So under media type, like I know that that's a photo paper, which is going to be a pro platinum paper for this one printer. Once we do that and we save, you should be able to print okay. Now, guys, this is information that is, I mean, I'm literally trying to hit it with a fire hose as fast as we humanly can. We could talk hours just in the print dialogue alone. Cynthia Hines, I didn't forget about you. I wanted to just come back and say that. There is a lot, right? There's a lot to kind of think about and cover over your head. The classes will deal with that stuff. Certainly the books will help with most of that stuff. But here, let me show you what your problem is right here in this one section. So I have all of these pictures that I put in, the Sabine shots and the Jen shots. Now, all of those pictures are sitting right here under Lightroom course files, right? Specifically, this collections and sets. So let's imagine that that's a hard drive, right? Then the hard drive goes kaput. I'm going to grab it and I'm going to move it out of that location, right? So now it's sitting here. It was here, but now it's here. It's as if somebody walked into the house and took the pictures that you had in the living room on the table that you wrote down on the notebook and moved them, but then never wrote them in the notebook. Right? So you come home, you look at your notebook and you go, in my notebook, it says that those pictures were on the table. Why are they not there? So if you look back inside of here, anytime that I go into these pictures, you'll see that it says photo is missing. So photo is missing will mean that there will not be anything that you can do on a develop standpoint because the photo is missing. The file cannot be found. You moved it, but you did not tell your notebook where they were. So what I would do to this would be a two-step process. The first thing that I would do, let me see. Oh, Lightroom. Do you guys need a Lightroom screen here? Can you guys see it? Okay. So the first thing that I would do from here is right click, select go to folder in library. Now, once you find the folder in the library, we're going to update that. Now, here's the thing. You could right click and from inside of here, select show in Finder and then locate the picture here and it would show you the last location. If you locate that one file, it'll then find all of the files inside of the folder. Don't do that. It'll be counterproductive because take a look at this. I like to do go to folder and library because like you guys, I have folders inside of subfolders, right? So I have this one subfolder and I have all of these other subfolders. So if you did a right click show in Finder and it found these and you have 700 folders that you got to go through, then that means that you got to go to the next folder. Right click, show in Finder, find those. Right click, show in Finder, find those. So get into the habit of updating the folder location rather than the file and it'll make it a lot easier. In this instance, right click, go to folder and library. You see the folder there, and you see that it's part of a parent folder, or in your case, it would be the name of the hard drive itself. So go to the name of the hard drive, And all you're going to do is right click, and from inside of here, let's say show parent folder. If you need it, I'm going to right click and then find missing folder. I'm going to navigate. There's the missing folder. Click choose. And once you've done that, then all of the folders that are inside of that folder are found. So if you go from one hard drive to another hard drive, rather than doing individual pictures one at a time, you can do an entire hard drive and bring that hard drive in straight down and get all of those subfolders as well. So I think that would be something that would be pretty helpful to you if you need to be able to migrate. That's also the way that I move stuff from my computer. Right? Remember that Mia portrait that we did? I would move it to a removable hard drive when I didn't need it, and then I would move it again to the network attached storage. And I talk about that during that the large Lightroom workflow class. I tell people kind of this is how I move from one point to another point to another point. So I didn't want to leave without actually showing you that, Cynthia, because I think it's very helpful for you to kind of do that. So let's see. Any other questions? Any other concerns? Anything else I can help with? Okay. Mercedes, are you here?
I am here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hi.
Thanks, RC. That was really helpful.
Oh, no worries. No worries. Happy to help. So hopefully this is something that you guys can actually take a look at for the book. You know, there are all of these different types of things, software you're using for screen sharing. I think they're using some webinars, some other thing. Cynthia, if you guys need to see more of my stuff, or if you want to be able to see anything, obviously go to firstshotschool.com. Obviously go to aboutrc.com. Cynthia, I'm almost always on social media at aboutrc. Let me know if I can help you with something. If I help you reconnect that hard drive, I would be more than happy to. I've been there as a person who's lost that hard drive. I know it sucks. So if I can help, I would be very happy to do so. But yeah, if you guys want to be able to see any of that stuff, just go over to the First Shot School site. If there's something that I can make for you guys in terms of content for a class, like I see that a lot of you guys are talking about print stuff. If you guys want to talk more print, dude, happy to. Anything that gets people printing is all right in my book. So I'm a big fan. So hopefully you can find that helpful, and go check out that book.
Thanks so much for joining us today, RC. And for everyone else who is here, we'll send you an email. You'll get the replay link so you can watch this again. The replay link will, also include our little technical error, but at least then they can fast forward through it. And we'll be sure to send you links to RC's First Shot School, as well as where you can buy his books with our special discount code. And we hope to see you guys again if we host another webinar in the future. Thanks so much, RC.
Thanks. See you guys later.
Bye.